talk about.
It's quite poor. Hello and welcome back to my video on how to set up a turntable, and we'll continue from where we left off. If this is the first time that you've been here and you've not seen part one, it won't make an awful lot of sense to you. So part one is linked down below in the description. So let's get started. Welcome back. I didn't leave the bearing for an hour. I've actually left it for 4 hours, and what I did do is I covered it up with a piece of lint-free cloth, just to make sure that no dust and dirt got down there. And every so often I would then just check it to make sure that it wasn't any dirt and muck and stuff like that coming. And it's pretty clean now, and it's also pretty dry. Although it looked fine right at the beginning of the first hour, I did feel there was quite a bit of white spirit still left in there. So it did take longer for the white spirit to evaporate. Anyway, we're all set to go now, and we can have a look, try and have a quick look down it. You can just about see the bearing down the bottom there. The way this works is we have our syringe of oil. Now, revolvers say that this will do several jobs really, and we need to put just enough oil down to cover the bearing. They don't tell you exactly how much, but they also ask that we also put a little bit of oil on the spindle shaft, which we'll do second. So let's take this rubber cap off and then pour. They do say in their instructions that it will do 3 or 4 turntables, although there's a numbering on the side to 2. I'm not quite sure what that means, but anyway. So if I'm going to look down here, I can see the oil going in. I think that's enough to cover. It's quite hard to see. I need to take my glasses off and have a really good look in. I think I need a bit more in there. So while we're at it, Platter here, we'll put a little bit on the end there, and then what we're going to do is just run that down. Need somewhere to just put back on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make sure we've got some oil round the spindle. My hands are clean, and I have actually used gel to make sure there's no grease and stuff on my hands. And then what we're going to do is we're going to gently, get out of the way, gently slide the platter down. We'll refit the belt. Now I'm just gonna, they don't tell you to do this, but I'm just gonna run that for probably about 5 or 10 minutes, just leave it running while we're doing other things really. I'm just gonna have a little bit of a clean up. I can hear a little bit of noise, and I just want to check whether that noise is actually coming from the bearing or is it coming from the actual motor. There is some motor noise, but there also is. I think we need maybe a bit more oil. So I have ended up using literally where there's a little 1 and a 2, you can see that, and I have used pretty much all of 1. So my thinking is that where this little shred says 1 and 2, although no matter what the paperwork said, I think you probably do, there's enough to do another turntable there. But there isn't enough in there to do 3 or 4 turntables. So, I mean, I think that there's still a little bit of noise, but I'm hoping that what will happen is that it'll settle down. Let's pop the belt back on and start on with our other bits and pieces that we need to do. It's always best item to find to put the revolver belt on the top spindle first and then move it round. Let's just leave that running, and that should run quite nicely now. We'll put our star mat back on, and for now we'll put the pig on. So the next job that we have to do is we have to make sure that the tone arm is correctly aligned. Now the thing about the tone arm is some turntables, like the original revolver turntable which we talked about earlier, you used to be able to put different arms on it. The arm on here is fixed, you can't change the arm. We can change the cartridge and the stylus, but we can't change the arm. It's got quite a good quality Audio-Technica cartridge on here. I've checked the stylus and the stylus is fine, and I played it on a record before we started and it sounded brilliant. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the weight. The way that when we look at this, we can turn the whole weight, but we can also turn the dial on the front there, that dial there, we can turn that independently from the whole weight. So the way that we do this is that we want, first of all, we need the arm to balance or just to fall first of all. Now this cartridge has a tracking force, and every cartridge is different as far as tracking force is concerned. This one will track at 2. Sometimes they can be as high as 3. A more expensive cartridge would be 1.5 grams, something like that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our weight on, and as I said before, there is a groove, and if I just put it on there, you'll see that the arm here is actually sitting up, and it needs to, we've got our little rest down, and it's still sitting up. So what we do is we keep turning it until it just falls down. Actually, I'm probably better doing this with the anti-skate off completely. We'll come back to the anti-skate. So that's gone down, but let me take it. So that's up. And that's down, but we're just going to back it off a bit. Still down. There we are, we're just about down. Now, what we need to, so what we need to do now is we need to move the dial at the front to 0. The other thing I've just noticed is, if we look at the turntable, it's actually still sitting up quite a way. So we need that to come down a bit more. Now, there's obviously air in the shaft where the oil is. We may have to leave that for a while. But we're going to come back to that. It needs to sit a bit lower because there's too much of a gap here. When we come to look at the measurements of the arm height, which actually we can't adjust on here, but on better quality arms we can adjust the height of the arm. We're going to find that where it's sat at the moment is it's actually pivoting too high, but that will drop down probably overnight. Now that we've got this weight at the back set to 0, we can now turn the whole thing again, and we're going to turn it to 2. So the turntable has now dropped to the right sort of height, and as you'll see here, the belt is sitting bang in the middle, which is exactly where it took about 10 minutes for it to actually all of the air to expel out the spindle chamber. So now we can move on to setting the anti-skate. I'm just going to turn it off for a minute so that we need a record. So if I turn the anti-skate off completely, on a more sophisticated arm, you can do much finer adjustments to the anti-skate. Here, because of what we've got with the budget Revolver Rebel, we're going to set it to the same anti-skate as the weight. Once I've finished everything else and I'm actually listening to the turntable, I might bring it back a little bit to about 1.5, see how it sounds towards the last track of a particular record, and then gauge it from there. It might need a little bit more, might need a little bit less. So setting the tracking force and the anti-skate to the same as an initial setting is a good rule of thumb, and then we can adjust those settings, fine settings as we need to, really. The other thing that we've got to do is we need to set the position of the cartridge in the head shell. and we're going to do that by using one of these. Now this one was for a particular arm. It's for an ADC ALT1 arm. It's also got an overhang arc. Now, because this is not an ADC ALT1 arm, that overhang arc might not be relevant, but we'll have a look at it anyway. So put it on the record. I'm going to put the plug on, the pig on, and what you do is you set now it's not sat on the paper because you have to be careful. I've still got it up on the actual tone armrest, and I have known this in the past. If you have it sat on there's a hole in the paper, it can rip the diamond off the stylus. So we're actually only having a look at it and seeing where it is, and we've got 3 points. We've got a point where it is now, we've got an S point, and we've got an where it says overhang over there. So let's just have a look at this and see how it goes. So if I then move it along, so far so good, looks pretty close. A bit more light maybe. Let's try a bit of, that's spot on. Oops. And then the last one, now here the last one is out. Could be two things going on there. One is we need to check does the cartridge itself need to come slightly forward. The fact that it's on the first 2 points is there. We need to look at the cartridge in the head shell against these lines that are on here, and to see whether it sits correctly in the head shell. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'll let you have a look at that once I've positioned where I think it should be. And I do that by looking directly down on the turntable, position it back at S, so when we look at it here, it's almost there, but it does need a slight adjustment. So what I need to do now is I need with my screwdriver to loosen the cartridge body, move it ever so slightly, and I need to move it slightly forward I think, and I need to also move it left to right. So let's just pop that there. Small screwdriver. So I've loosened it now so I can move the head shell. So back to where we were. So if we look at it now, we'll see that the cartridge is directly between the two lines. So it's come slightly forward and I've twisted it ever so slightly. Interestingly enough, the overhang arc at that point there, the stylus tip now fits. So I just need to tighten that up and we'll be good to go. So the interesting thing here is we need to be able to tighten it up without moving the head shell. There we are. One last check. Let's go back and look at it again in the 3 positions. So there is our first position. The second position, and we'll have a look overhead. And we'll check that third position. It's a bit too far forward there. I've just moved the whole thing. Yes, happy with that. So that's all good. So we've done the cartridge alignment, we've done the, now on a more expensive arm, what we would be able to do is we would be able to check the arm height. Now this arm is fixed, so we can't do that, but we'll put it on the record and we'll just have a look. And in fact, I'm going to use this because we've got a straight line on here, and I'm just going to have a quick look at it. Yeah, that looks really good. So I wouldn't expect it to be anything less, because the arm height isn't adjustable in this particular case. But it's worth mentioning that if you've got something like an SME arm, or the Lin Basic arm I think was adjustable, or some of the more modern arms, you can adjust the height, and it would be the last thing to check really. So we're almost there. I mean, what I will now do is I will now plug it in and I will listen to it, and I will tweak the weights if I need to, tweak the anti-skate if I think it's not quite tracking correctly, especially having to listen to the last track on an album. You automatically, when it's not tracking correctly and the anti-skate isn't correctly, you'll hear distortion. So you know, you need to be aware of that really. The other thing that's worth mentioning is obviously when we plug in our phono lead, we have a ground strap. So usually what you would do is you would put the ground strap to an amplifier, something that's going to ground. If you do that and you've still got hum, have a look at your cartridge. Now this cartridge is a plastic bodied cartridge, but there are, I mean, I've used Pickering cartridges before, and they're metal bodied, and they actually have a ground strap inside that connects to the body of the actual cartridge body, and you need to take that ground strap out really. So be aware that, you know, it's not always as straightforward as you think. Whatever happens, you can plug it in and then see whether you've got any ground hum. I would leave the turntable, actually switch, plug it all in, switch the amplifier on, turn it up, have a listen. Have we got any hum? If we've got hum, then we've obviously got a problem. Make sure that's connected. If that's connected and we've still got hum, then we need to look for where the other solutions might be. It's also worth mentioning a lot of hi-fi systems now do not come with a turntable built-in preamp. They only come with the line level preamp to put a CD player and things like that. So you may need what's called an RIAA preamp, and that's this type of thing here. Now what these are, this is a battery mains one. It's actually got a little ground strap, so we could put our ground strap to that. We plug the output into a line level, so a CD or an auxiliary input. We put the phono into there, and we can actually put a CD player into the other one, and then basically all we've got is a switch. So phonos, the turntable, AUX, in this case would be CD player or something like that. So there, and that one runs on battery. Also, you can buy an external 9 volt DC adapter thing for it, but I've always used it on a battery. And the batteries last for really quite a long time. You need to make sure that you switch it off though. There's a little on-off switch at the back of this particular one. But that's also worth considering. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this video useful. And if you like what I do, hit the subscribe button, and a thumbs up is always much appreciated. And if you've got any questions about this sort of stuff, please pop it in the links down below. And I'll see you in another video. Thanks very much. Bye bye.